I mean, I had my rich dad, poor dad moment when I was 18 years old. I was still at university and I met this entrepreneur. And he was just a regular community college teacher and he invested in real estate. He built an apartment building, a 36-unit apartment building. He was doing a shopping center and all that kind of stuff. And I realized that I was comparing my parents and this new guy, this real estate investor, is like, he's no smarter than my parents. He's just like, he has a different kind of smartness, a different kind of intelligence. He was aware of how to get loans, how to build things, how to create value. And so that's what I call my rich dad, poor dad moment.
Welcome to the Real Estate Mogul MD podcast. Thanks for tuning in and taking control of your financial future. This is a show where we not only motivate and inspire, we give you actionable, real-world experience to help you live life by design. You'll hear journeys and stories from other physicians, investors, coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs. And now, here's your host, Brett Riggins. Today's guest acquired his first multi-unit apartment building at the age of 18, still in college. And after graduating and starting a job as an actuary, and I needed to ask what this was, this is a person who studies the risk for insurance companies, for investment companies, was able to take that, leverage it, and start building a little nest egg. But after the dot-com crash in 2001, he really pushed into real estate. He founded Martel Turnkey, and since then has done 650 flips, completed over $85 million in real estate transactions. The focus is single-family residential with multiple exit strategies. That's how he's mitigating risk. And also on top of that, with all that experience, has created a platform called Flip System in 2023. What a conversation. I am diving in with some hard questions on single-family residential, the process, the systems, the metrics. How can we mitigate risk? Everybody, please welcome Eric Martel to the show. All right, Eric, welcome to the show. We are rocking and rolling. The record button has been pushed. You've been prepped and prepared that we're going to drill you and grill you on real estate. So welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Brett. I didn't expect to be grilled.
Drilled and grilled, man. There's two ways coming at you. No, it's fun. You are a seasoned veteran, and let's get the listeners up to speed here on a little bit on your background. This is Real Estate Mogul MD. We talk with physicians, entrepreneurs, real estate investors, coaches, consultants, all of that stuff. But today, you're a couple of those combined with your experience in real estate and where you're at currently in your career as well, too. So let everybody know a little bit about Eric.
Yeah. I mean, tell you a little bit about myself. I mean, I had my rich dad, poor dad moment when I was 18 years old. I was still at university and I met this entrepreneur. And he was just a regular community college teacher and he invested in real estate. He built an apartment building, a 36-unit apartment building. He was doing a shopping center and all that kind of stuff. And I realized that I was comparing my parents and this new guy, this real estate investor, is like, he's no smarter than my parents. He's just like, he has a different kind of smartness, a different kind of intelligence. He was aware of how to get loans, how to build things, how to create value. And so that's what I call my rich dad, poor dad moment. And with his help and his mentorship, I basically bought at 18 years old my first apartment building, an 8-unit apartment building with no money down and still cash flowing. Took a lot of work though. So it's not like, oh yeah, here's one. I'm just going to buy it, with no money down. Obviously, it was not, the best property and it was, I was able to do that with no money down, with seller financing and all that. And I had to analyze like hundreds of properties, literally, 400 or 500 properties. And my realtor was really like, Eric, like they don't exist. What you're looking for doesn't exist. Stop looking. And trying to convince me. And, but eventually I found one and, he was all of a sudden very quiet. But it took me a long time after that to actually find, because I moved to different cities, big cities. It was hard to find deals that make sense, that were cash flowing and have some appreciation. And it really took me until 12, 15 years ago to do that. Even when I moved to California in 2000, I had tons of money. I had tons of stock options and millions of dollars in stock options. And I was trying desperately to invest in real estate and nothing was penciling out. it was just insane. I had to put so much money down in order for it to cash flow that my return on equity was like 1% or 2%. So I left everything in the stock market, and then the dot-com crash happened and it basically wiped me out. And I said, okay, well, I have to find something different. I have to invest in real estate, but in cash flowing real estate. Where do I find that? And that's when we started looking out of state. So we started looking at Cleveland, St. Louis, Memphis. These are kind of like where we started.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Yeah. That original position, I noticed that you said you were an actuary. What in the world is an actuary? I just don't know.
So actuary is basically the math of financial risk. So I worked a lot with pension plans, automobile insurance company, house insurance, and we would calculate the reserve, or we would calculate the premiums that they would have to charge for different class of risk. But really, it's really the math of financial risk overall, and you can apply it into different domains.
So you hit that, you were holding off, and then the dot-com hit, where it would have been a 1% return looked lovely at that point in time, right? So Here we are after the dot-com. Where then did you lead, Eric?
So after that, I tried all kinds of different businesses. We're a family of entrepreneurs. So we had like a low carb grocery store. We had the gourmet sauce company. We had, and the intention was all the companies that I built, I set them up so that they would be self-managed eventually. So we created the SOPs and all that kind of stuff, so that I can delegate to other people. Really, none of them really kind of like got the traction up until we went back to real estate. And one of my sons said, I want to be a real estate investor. And I was like, oh my God. But that's when we started looking. We tried different approach in California, but nothing really worked. We even tried like commercial and all of that, but yeah, it didn't work. But out of state, we were able to find deals out of state. And the first deal that we did, we were just looking to build our own passive income portfolio. We were not looking to create like, any kind of company. We just wanted to have passive income portfolio for our family. And so the first deal we did was in Memphis, Tennessee. We bought the house like for $45,000, put $5,000 in, and then we had like put a tenant in there. I think it was like $750 a month, and it was cash flowing. So we refinanced it after we did the minor rehab, and I was able to get all my money out plus another like $5,000 or $6,000 cash in my pocket that I didn't have when I started that project. And I had a cash flowing asset that was appreciating. And I was like, okay, well, 2 more of those, please. So that's when I was hooked like right away at that point. I said like, well, I can literally print money. Obviously, these deals don't happen all the time. So they're very rare. I call them like unicorns. But they do happen every once in a while, and we take advantage of those. But even if the other properties that we did, we refinanced them, we were able to get like 90% of our cash back out, leave a little bit of money in the deal. And our cash on cash return was, around like the 20 to 25%. So it was just phenomenal. And then we had done a lot of businesses, as I mentioned, and our friends and people that I worked with and people that I was talked to, that they would say like, what are you guys doing now? I said, well, I invest in single family rentals in Memphis. I buy them distressed. And you do what? Where? What are you doing? What? So they thought I was crazy. And after a while, maybe a year or so, we had accumulated a small portfolio. And so people said, well, are you interested in selling some of these properties? And that's when that whole idea of starting Martel Turnkey was launched, basically. So a lot of people were interested in buying the property that already had a tenant in place, that was renovated recently, and all the systems were updated and maintained, and then people could buy it. It was cash flowing from day one, and we would introduce them to the property management company, And we also did like appraisal matching. So if there was, once they want to get their loan, and if the appraisal didn't match the sale price, we would adjust the sale price accordingly. So there was really very little risk. I mean, you had an appraisal that told you what the value of the property was. It was fairly recently renovated, and you had a tenant in place, so you knew what the tenant was. So, it was pretty sweet. And we did about 650 of those flips so far, and we're continuing to do that. And as we were talking to many investors, then they ask questions. Say, hey, I really like what you're doing with Martel Turnkey. Can you show me like how to do it, how you do it? Like, what if I want to buy the distressed property myself? And then can you introduce me to contractors? Can you help me out? Can you coach me? And so that's what we started doing. We started doing like online training, coaching, one-on-one coaching. And I really thought that these two programs, the online training and the one-on-one coaching, would have really made people successful. Because that's how I was able to buy an 8-unit apartment building when I was 18 years old. And I thought that everybody is going to be like that. This is going to, but it is a lot of work, because when you want to start this kind of business, I mean, you want to start out of state, you have to build a team, you have to call a whole bunch of realtors, property managers, make sure they have contractors, make sure they know they know what an opportunity looks like, and they can work with you, they speak the language. And, there's a lot of things that you have to figure out. And it takes a long time to ramp up. And then you want to do one property with them to make sure everything is working out, that the contractor is working out, that you have to build that relationship as well over time. It doesn't happen like right away. They deal with a lot of investors. So all of that.
Interesting.
So yeah, we were pretty disappointed by that, by the success of the people that were coached. We had I think 3 or 5% of the people actually did a deal, an actual real estate deal.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so we thought, it depends how you measure success. Some people measure success by the number of people that's paying them. We measure success by the number of people that actually are able to do a deal with our coaching. So not very happy with that metric. And then we went back to the drawing board with my family and said, what else do we have to do for them to be successful? And that's when Flip System was launched, where we basically do the online training, the coaching, but then we have our acquisitions teams that is pre-evaluating and pre-analyzing deals. We coach them on, deal review, on how to acquire acquisition strategy. We also have the same guy that was managing all our constructions for Martel Turnkey is now reviewing inspection report, rehab bids, and to kind of helping guide our clients into this. And so right now it's kind of the opposite. Now we have 97% of our clients are successfully able to do a deal with Flip System. So that we feel very good about that, and we're hoping to continue on that track record.
So as an actuary into single family, very interesting, knowing risk, there's so much more to it that happens even after the close, even after you can get it refinanced, your projections work that first year. There's so much risk that's tied into your processes and your team from that point moving forward.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind, I'd love to dive into this a little bit and talk a little bit about metrics and certain things that mitigate that risk for you.
Yeah.
So I call them flip to hold. When you take that flip system like that, I love it as a flipper myself, creating those bubbles of capital. And then when we're able, we could cherry pick these certain ones where we had that non-taxable situation where we borrowed more money than we had into it. I love it. Infinite return situation.
Yeah.
In those times, Eric, what pieces in the renovation mitigate the most risk for you if you're buying for cash flow?
So if you're buying for cash flow, the renovation, so this is the nice thing about the rental, the rental market, the single family rental market, is that typically the budget. So when I'm looking at the scope of work that needs to be done, I don't want to do a gut job. I don't want to open walls. I don't want to redesign the layout or anything like that. So I keep it like around the $25,000 budget. So the roof, mechanicals, they need to be changed or they need to be maintained. The floor, the paint, redo the kitchen. And, if you don't open walls and you don't start to do, redo the electric, redo the plumbing, all that kind of stuff, and you stay away from foundation, you basically minimize your risk significantly. So you do an inspection, you make sure there's no foundation issue, you make sure there's no drain issue as well, the main drain that goes to the street. Often these drains are kind of old for the some properties, and you're sure to have a problem. So you can look at that, you can scope them out, and then you say, well, this is a point for you to kind of go back and negotiate with the seller and say, well, we scoped the main drain, and then you have an issue. It's going to cost $5,000 to fix that. We need the price reduction. We need this. So, and the whole thing for us is, and for me, is about, you have to calculate all the multiple exits. The more exit strategies you have, the better it's going to be. And again, this is why I like the single family rental model, is that I have multiple exit strategy when I buy the house. I can refinance it. I can try to sell it as a turnkey rental. I can put like Section 8 in that rental unit. I can also sell it as a retail flip also. The level of renovation is different, but if I go in and I see the property is a well location and I'm stuck, I can't find a tenant. I don't know why not, but and then somehow, or someone is interested in getting it as a retail flip, then you can kind of get into these negotiation. Or if you can't find a tenant or you can't refinance for whatever reason and you want to do the retail flip, then you may want to spend a little bit more money on the kitchen and bathroom maybe, and then sell it as a retail flip after that. But that's another exit strategy that you have available to you when you do these single family rentals. And that's what I like. And then multiple exit strategies is really telling you that, it's going to minimize risk. It's not going to eliminate risk, but it's going to minimize the risk.
Yeah, absolutely. And those Section 8s, sometimes we're seeing where you can get Section 8 rent a little higher than what they call the street payer or the cash pay renter. Yeah. But if you change your acquisition process to fit that, then you're limiting your exit strategies and you're increasing your risk. So watching out for that. Hey, Eric, what's your bread and butter buy window? I know it's going to vary for each area. You're in multiple areas, but if you could say, hey, I want this kind of house, what would that house be when it comes to single family long-term rental?
Yeah. So on the Martel Turnkey side, if you're looking at and also for our flip system students that want to do the turnkey flip model, so you have to look at, we calculate kind of what is going to look like for the buyer of that property. So the buyer of that property is looking for, 8 to 10% cash on cash return. So we calculate that and we say, well, this is the price that we can sell it at. Based on the rent that we can get, based on, the insurance. We calculate all of that up front. Similarly, our software, Flip System comes with a software, and then that software actually calculates all these exit strategies. So you can decide, this one, if I do a refi at the end of my rehab, once it's tenanted, I could actually get all my money out and I have one of those unicorn, or I can leave $10,000 out and have 25% cash on cash return. So you see all your exit strategy. We calculate all the exit strategies, and then you would know kind of right up front, like, okay, well, it's better for me to just flip it as a turnkey at that point. So that's what we're looking for. In terms of the actual numbers, we're looking at around 120 to 150 for the value that we sell at. And that would give you a rent of about 12 to 1,500. We're pretty close to that 1% rule in terms of the rent to value ratio. And then if you calculate, the holding cost, typically our project lasts for about 6 months. So you would buy around, $60,000, put around $25,000 in rehab over 5 months, and then be able to sell it for 120, 130 and make a pretty decent profit. Profit of about like ten to $20,000 in profit. And that gives you a pretty good return if you do like a hard money lender or private money lender. So that would give you a return of about 80% annualized return on that particular flip.
Interesting. And as far as the size of the house, what's the little sweet spot for you?
So it depends on the market, as you can imagine, but it's really around the 1,000 to 1,200 square foot, like 2-3 bedroom, 1 bath, 2 bath. So that's the bread and butter.
Awesome. And I love breaking it down. So if you're looking at the 1,000 square feet at 25,000 in renovation, you're looking at about $25 a square foot. So just in renovation. So if you're just adding that in there, and the more of these things, like you said, when you did those commercial units, like how many of those did you do? You start noticing these little trends in these little pockets. Yeah. But what's even cooler is once you start producing these results, then you can measure not only projections, but how close you are to those.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. I mean, knowing. And you never want to make an investment based off a square foot number, right? No. But it kind of puts you in that pocket. And you talked about the 1%. So that's that 1% rule is like the gross rent, monthly gross rent divided by ARV or your sale price gives you that. And that's where you're at the $1,000 or $100,000 house. You want to gross a monthly rent around $1,000. Yeah. $120,000 house, you really want that $1,200 gross monthly.
Yeah.
What are some other metrics that you look at as an asset manager? Say I've got 20 single family units. Mm-hmm. What are some of the KPIs or the metrics that you measure to make sure that asset is performing?
Yeah. So for me, it's return on equity. So that's the big one. At the beginning of, the money that you put in, that's going to be your equity. So then you look at that and you look at the return. So if you do a refi after the flip, it's going to be whatever amount of money that's left in the deal, and then kind of like what is the net cash flow that you're getting out of that. So that's the big one that I look at. And this is why I don't invest in California because return on equity is just insanely low. Yeah. If it's positive. So, most people are just counting on equity, in those markets. And, they say, oh no, the cash flow doesn't matter. It's really about the equity. But because they say, well, the appreciation in California is so great. We have great appreciation in Detroit, in Cleveland. If you look historically over the last 5 years, we had appreciation higher than LA and San Francisco. Mm-hmm. So we have the appreciation and we have the cash flow on top of that. So if you do these two, I mean, it's these great markets are great. I know they're not, what's the word?
Sexy?
Sexy, that's the word. Yeah. That's sexy market, right? Nobody's proud. Like when I told my friends that, hey, I'm investing in Memphis, nobody was like, wow, that's so great. No,
there's a negative stigma that's around certain areas, whether people know it or not. And just the same way, when we look at investing in properties, no matter what market you're in, they're not typically going to be areas where I would personally want to put my family because I have the choice. And I've been shown other ways of doing things, but people always live somewhere. And if you can put a nice, neat, clean, mechanically sound property in there, you're going to find a good family, and good families deserve good properties.
Yeah. And that's why we focus a lot on the working class, people that are like electrician, janitors, or, they work at the store or something like that at the plant, GM plant or Ford, just regular nurses, So, just normal people, normal working people, and they're responsible. They want to pay their rent. They want to live in a home, but they can't afford one.
Yeah. And back to that question about the 20 properties in portfolio, return on equity. I understand that piece, but that's like on your initial initial basically investment. Once that property is stabilized, what metrics are you using to make sure that property manager is doing what they're doing, to make sure that that cash flow is consistent, make sure that these CapEx aren't creeping up on me because I didn't replace a furnace or a roof, talking about reserves and like what kind of metrics are you looking at to make sure a stabilized property is maintaining the return?
Yeah. And so again, so return on equity at the beginning, you're right, but also over time as the value of the property increases. So we kind of look at over a couple of years, we wait a couple of years. And if the property increased in value dramatically in a particular area, that means there's a lot of equity that's built up, and then your return on equity then kind of goes down. So you have an opportunity there to take some cash out if you want, and then kind of like reinvest in your portfolio. And the other thing that we do with the portfolio is, it's just basic management in terms of, making sure that the tenants are paying on time, the vacancy, make sure that we keep the vacancy low, and then see if there's also any kind of like issues, like recurring issues with the maintenance of a property. So that's the kind of thing that we're looking at. But yeah, vacancy is the big one. Maintenance, like any kind of major maintenance issues. We have home warranties on all these properties. So if a major mechanical issue happen, then you're covered by that. You pay $100, and then they replace the furnace or they fix the furnace for you. So that's pretty cheap. What else? And this basically, we want to monitor also that the property manager, that's more importantly, we want to make sure that they're on top of things, that we have the right rent roll, that they keep on top of the tenant paying the rent. And I don't want to deal with the tenant directly, but I want to make sure that they do. And they also are communicating with me kind of what the potential rent increase that we can do. So we have a few. It's very nice when you call your property manager and stuff like that. Hey, what's the situation with this? We're thinking about selling some houses right now, and then talking about getting some equity out. And then we just we're looking at that. And so what's the tenant like right now? What's the rent? So we're actually sent something. It was a Section 8 house. And then they say, we already submitted for a rent increase for that. So that's the kind of thing you want to hear from your property manager, that on top of that, they already submitted for a rent increase with the CMHA, and you didn't have to worry about that. That's the kind of service that you want to have. And you want to build that relationship. A lot of people want to, they talk, I want to visit my properties. Don't visit your properties. Visit your property manager.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can go visit your properties, but visit your property manager, build a relationship with them, visit the realtor to help you find these.
You probably had this question too before, Eric, is like when you're like on the turnkey model, if you're, somebody from California is buying a house in Cleveland or Detroit or Memphis, and they have this urge or like security net to say, what if I need to go there? I always say, if you need to go there, I'm not doing my job providing you with an opinion on this particular scenario, whether it's a relationship, an asset itself, or whatever. The same way, it's like I grew so much. I heard you mentioning stuff about being an entrepreneur, and it made me think of the book E-Myth.
Oh, yeah.
Observer. Yeah. So that idea of creating a path or building a business built to sell, or built to sell, another great book. So you're setting these systems up, but you've got to look at it as a business. You should never be required to have your boots on the site. Yeah, it is good to have your boots on the site, especially if you're building teams, and, to nurture relationships and build the equity in those relationships is really, really important. Do you know of any asset management software, if you have, say, 50, 100 single family units? I've got them in 2 or 3 different markets. I'm using 3 or 4 different property managers. I can't keep all of that straight. Are there any asset management softwares that allow me to measure the return on the property and basically hold my property managers accountable for things like vacancy, delinquencies, credit loss, like from the commercial side of things?
No, I don't know of any right now. And we have, as I mentioned, we're building a software. We have a software that's built to help our people, our clients actually invest in single family rentals and do these flips and do these refi. And that's something that's in our backlog right now, is to be able to manage all your assets, because we do have our clients, half of our clients are not selling their properties that they finished renovating. They're actually refinancing them and keeping them as part of their portfolio. And then they're starting to ask, like, I want to keep maintaining that. I want to connect to Appfolio from my property manager in Detroit. I want to connect with this and that, and then have everything inside the portal, the Flip System portal. So these are things that we're planning to build, and it's just like so much things to be done. We want to change the way real estate investing is done. It is the systems are so archaic, so we want to really change the way things are done, and we're always looking for partners, like lenders that want to connect with us, or insurance companies that want to connect with us in our portal, so that our clients can go and say, "Oh, I want an insurance quote on this particular property," and it just like boop, goes to the insurance company, it comes back, and then you have the quote. Same thing with the lender. I want to buy this distressed property. Here's the quote. So we're working with a lender right now where this is literally what's going to happen. You're going to click a little button. It's going to send it to the lender. The lender is going to give you a term sheet with the loan, and you're going to be ready to go. You're going to have accurate, relatively accurate numbers on these properties, and then you can move forward.
Are you guys, your clients, your clients, are you using commercial loans? So titling the properties in LLCs, or are you doing personal loans, LLCs?
LLC. Some of them are using conventional loans, and then LLCs or the SCR loans. So
the SCR. Yep. Beautiful. And the question just jumped into my mind. On a turn of a property, what is an average turn cost that you see, say 1,000, 1,200 square foot house, to go from one tenant to another without it being a bad tenant? Like, what's a normal turn that you would project?
I would say between around $2,000. I would budget. We take that's kind of how much we would spend if they were pretty good. If they were good tenants and they took care of things, we would kind of budget $2,000. This is also an opportunity for us to, sometimes you have to kind of like do something with the furnace, maintain it. Sometimes, paint everything and stuff like that. So $2,000 is a pretty good budget.
What do you, when you're running your projections, figuring out on the acquisition side, what are you using for reserves, like maintenance and vacancy?
So about 5% for 5 to 10% between vacancy and maintenance.
Okay. How do you treat CapEx? Because some people like want to put that in there. It's one of the difficult things. You say the systems are archaic. I do agree, but there's still so much subjectivity to the acquisition piece as well too.
So we want to make sure that all the systems and stuff like that, they have more than 5 years of lifetime. They have maybe 10 years of lifetime, but at least 5 years of lifetime left. So so if we have a furnace that's been that the inspector that we sent for Martel Turnkey, for example, said, "Oh, no, this is on its last leg," then we would probably replace it. If it says, "Yeah, and there's probably like a 5, 6, 7 years left on this," then we would just maintain it, do whatever is, put it as good as we can, good solid maintenance on that, and then we recommend the buyer to actually buy home insurance at that point. And then if something happens with the furnace, or if something happens with the AC, then they're covered by the home insurance, and then they could be, that could be replaced.
So that helps that CapEx piece. Do you ever have like a CapEx reserve?
I don't hold a reserve. No, I just, I don't hold a particular reserve. No.
Interesting. When you figure your cash on cash returns, are you pulling out those reserves when you figure that cash on cash return?
No, so I don't. Yeah, so when I do the cash on cash reserve, when I calculate it, I would calculate it without the vacancy and maintenance. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but I could calculate it either way. And our clients, they decide how they want to calculate it. So
Yeah.
we
That's
do
that
have.
subjective piece.
Yeah, yeah.
It's so interesting.
If I'm selling it, like on Martel Turnkey, sometimes we're not going to put vacancy and maintenance just because none of our competitors are putting vacancy and maintenance.
Yeah.
People feel differently about different things.
Yep. Yep.
In reality, I don't hold reserve in the bank account and say, oh, this is my 5% reserve for vacancy and maintenance. In reality, I don't do that. I like my cash to be working for me. So I always put everything in work,
Yep.
work and other investments. So
What's your opinion on, with that in mind, focusing cash flow to pay down mortgages? Do you do that, or do you hold? You're not doing a reserve account, so this cash flow that's coming in, are you using that and injecting it into different investments then, or are you paying down mortgages?
yeah, I would pay, well, it pays the mortgage. So the
Yeah,
net,
the simple service, the minimum payment of the mortgage
yeah,
service, right?
yeah.
That cash flow on top of that. Are you focusing on mortgages to pay them off faster?
I don't try to pay off the mortgage faster. No, not at this time. It might be something that I would consider like later on, like if I'm trying to, I'm at the top of I want a portfolio, let's say of 40 or 50 units, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm there, and I don't need the cash flow, then I would probably look at paying off some of the properties that, they're close to the end, properties that I've held for like 10, 15 years, maybe start paying them off a little bit earlier. But part of my strategy also is later on is to leverage that cash anyway. So
Yeah.
so to invest in other things. So
If you had 40 or 50 units all leveraged,
mhm.
what sort of mechanism or mindset do you keep in case COVID happens again? If we look at business, we could all wave a magic wand and hold a year's worth of operating expense in our operating expense account. That'd be great. So if you have 40 to 50 units leveraged, what do you do to kind of mitigate the risk of something big happening where you've got 40 to 50 mortgage payments to make for 2, 3, 4, 5 months?
Yeah. So COVID, I mean, it didn't really affect me that much. I know some people were really affected by that, but I had over 100 units at the time with Martel Turnkey that we were holding to kind of either resell or waiting for the tenant to move out so that we can renovate and then resell. And so we had like 100 of these units. And out of all these units, we had 3 people that had an issue paying the rent. All the
Wow.
other ones, we basically said, if they were talking to us about their issues and stuff like that, we would work with them, or we would point them to the government agencies that would help them pay the rent. So I think we had, and I think one of them, I think we never recovered. He eventually was evicted. Then the other person, I think, was able to recover. We worked something out with them, and the other one actually went to the government agency, and that government agency paid us the back rent, and then started paying the rest of the rent.
Yep.
So maybe we're lucky.
You were in the right states.
Yeah. Well, I invest in landlord-friendly states.
Yeah.
So this was my number one rule, is that I want to be in landlord-friendly state. And Detroit is not quite landlord-friendly, but it's...
No, so that one, yeah, I've got properties in Southwest Michigan, which is just on the other side of the state. COVID, I actually acquired a 4-unit in Grand Rapids, Michigan during that time. It was horrendous. I had to evict all 4 people, and it was just absolutely horrendous, that eviction process.
Oh, wow.
How is that? What's that look like for you in Detroit when it comes to an eviction? Like if somebody's late on rent, day one, how many days does it get to get possession back, get that person back so you can start that turn process?
Yeah, so it'd be about 45 to 60 days. what some of our clients have done recently that I've heard is that they would pay cash for keys. They would give them like $1,000 or whatever to give the keys back and move out. So that's
cash for keys. Very interesting. I want to ask a few questions here. I could talk with you for hours. I want to ask a few questions here. And typically it's, if I could go back 10 years and set aside something in the same path, but I want to ask a more experience related questions directly to you, Eric. 3 different areas in acquisition, renovation, and mortgage. What was your biggest mistake in each one? Which would you do differently for that mistake? So in acquisitions, what was the biggest mistake you made, single family residential in acquisitions?
Yeah. So acquisition, I would say it's when we bought a portfolio. We bought at one point, so when we had these 100 units, because we had bought like a portfolio of 50 occupied single family rentals. And they were kind of all over the place, but they were pretty good at the time, but they were occupied. And so we kind of like budgeted kind of how much we would have to renovate and all of that. But we had a lot of surprises in those things. And some of them, you just like you can't inspect all of them. So and we inspected a whole bunch of them to get a sample, things that were more risky. But so if I was to redo it, I would probably not do that. Or kind of, I don't know. It's not a big regret. Like we made it okay with that, but So.
And that's I've actually heard that multiple times from people who have acquired portfolio occupied portfolios. We went through one deal, Eric, where we were picking up 20. We went into contract. We had all 20. We went through the inspection. We inspected every single one. And from what this, I'm a licensed I'm a licensed real estate person too, but this particular realtor had no clue about the condition of the property. One of them had a pool and he didn't even know it, an indoor pool. He didn't even know it. I don't want that in my rental. But anyway, went from $1,500, you're covered, right? $1,500 feels like is always the answer. Eric, when we got done with this, we were literally up probably close to $250,000 in repairs that needed to happen on these properties. So it was just way off. You can't never trust what the seller is saying. Now,
we had done so many. So our deals, if you look at our deals, if you look at Martel Turnkey, for example, you're going to see the deals that were done, the ones that are for sale, but also some that we sold, the more recently one. And then you'll see that they're pretty much like cookie cutters. They're all the same thing. So we had done like hundreds of those deals before in these markets, and we felt pretty confident about kind of like the budget, the average budget. But there was a few surprises in there. Like even some of them that even the inspector went in when it was occupied and he said, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. And, he missed a window and he missed, a hole in the wall under a hole in the floor under the bed.
Oh, wow.
Massive hole. So when the furniture was all removed, it was like, what the heck? It was not a hole from the second floor to the first floor. It was a hole from the main floor to the ground.
Oh yeah.
So it was
wow. Interesting. Yep. And you can't ever count on leaving flooring, especially carpet, when there's, you buy it occupied, because once the couch moves away from that massive stain, then he's like, oh, that's something I got to fix. How about renovation? What was the biggest mistake in a single family renovation, and what would you do differently?
So I think sometimes the realtor would tell us, oh, you don't need to have an inspection. And so we trusted the realtor for that. And I think you always want to have an inspection. We had some issues with foundation. The realtor said he walked the property and we had to pay $14,000 in renovations.
What market was that?
So that was in Cleveland.
Yeah. Cleveland. Okay.
So, so he, we trusted him at the beginning, but then at the end, it was like, he didn't seem to.
If there was a way to make your judgments based on who is actually going to have skin in the game for a certain amount of time, there's almost like a rating that should go with that opinion based on length of time connected to the opinion. How about mortgage? What was the biggest mistake you've made on a single family mortgage? What would you do differently?
So it was not a mortgage. It was actually a line of credit that we did. So we had like at one point, it's like, is it the $10 million line of credit? And then but it was variable. And then the interest rates started going up.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a disaster. So we had to sell a lot of properties and pay down that $10 million line of credit very, very quickly. And that was very painful.
Yep.
We had to eat like peanut butter for months.
Oh boy, that is so much. So there's so much in this conversation. Again, whenever I have these conversations with guests, it's easy for me to see. I'm hoping that the listeners can see as well, too, on the experience that you've put into this, the resources that you're offering now, the relationships that you're offering now on Martel Turnkey, as well as Flip Systems, right? So it's martelturnkey.com and flipsystem.com. It's where you've packaged this stuff up. The difference being from the outside, Eric, Flip System, I love a flip to hold. That's where you're going to find it can happen. You can find these infinite return type, what you call the leprechaun or a unicorn. But you're gonna find it easier when you're the one putting in the sweat equity to find the deal, to manage the deal, to make that work. So ultimately, these are the resources there for everybody. We appreciate your time. And man, I love this. I'm going to cut this up and try to share it with everybody because there's just so much information here.
Thank you. And if people want to reach out to me on social media, I'm Eric Martel Official. So I'm everywhere on YouTube as well. So you can search for my channel in there as well.
Perfect. All right. Awesome. Again, thank you for your time. Thank you to the listeners out there today. Single family. I don't want to scare anybody away from single family. I think it's a great platform. Just like everything else, you've got to have the right relationships. You got to have the right resources. And you got to know that it's going to take focus. It's going to take focus and attention to get things right. So much in real estate, especially in single family, I say that it can make so much money. You don't know how much money it's losing. So if you don't have these metrics, these KPIs, if you don't have the right people in place to show that attention to that investment, it's going to absorb the money. It's going to take it right out of you. Never buying anything that doesn't cash flow is, it's just a different approach. If you're buying for appreciation, it's a different animal, different risk level. But this is bread and butter stuff that we're talking about today, from the size of the house, where it's at, how you're projecting your returns, mitigating risk by the actuary himself. Thank you for joining us and giving us your attention today. This is Real Estate Mogul MD.